Hello and welcome back to Raise the Trident. My name is Jake, and today I have a really interesting video for you. It has been floated around quite a bit that Ketel Marte is potentially available on the trade market from the Arizona Diamondbacks, and of course a lot of Seattle Mariners fans and content creators would like them to be in on the Ketel Marte sweepstakes, and therefore there have been a lot of mock trades floating around, and I just wanted to see what would it really take to potentially get Ketel Marte, and why not have a couple guys who are really into the Dbacks, have been writing for the Dbacks as well, and see what they think. So we're going to go over that and we'll get into that just a second. A quick disclaimer before we get into the video. This video, the goal is not to work out a trade where it's like we would say yes to this, or this is what we think these teams, especially like the Mariners, would be comfortable doing. We simply wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty of what would Ketel Marte cost. If the Mariners were trying to trade for him, what do we think the cost will be? Now, that doesn't mean that the Mariners would say yes or do that trade. It's not whether we would say yes or do that trade. It's just simply, this is what we think the price is. So just want to put that out there really quick so you know our intentions behind this, but let's get right into it. For that, I wanted to bring on a couple guys who know a lot from the D-back side of things so that we can really kind of get a good, hopefully somewhat idea on what a trade package will look like. So of course, Aaron Hughes has been on the channel before. He's not necessarily a stranger at all. For the first time, Alex D'Agostino from Dbacks on SI is here. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate. I always love being on the channel. You know, we talk ball all the time. I'm sending you all kinds of stuff, and then obviously talking with some other guys in the Mariners space as well. I know I've gotten a lot of questions about Marte trade, all that stuff, so it's fun to be here.
I'm hoping that this episode can help people kind of gain a bit of knowledge about, one, why would Ketel Marte even be traded, and two, when it comes to a D-backs Mariners deal, which we already know they're very familiar with each other, like it's not surprising if that were to occur, what this would look like. Because I think a lot of people are very kind of, I mean, the full spectrum has been shown on Twitter on like what people think a good mock trade is for this. So why not? Let's just go with guys who are very familiar on the D-back side of things. And I'll try to do my best as the Mariners representative of this podcast. Probably won't do that great because I'm not a big mock trade guy. I'm really bad at mock trades. So, you know, hey, you may laugh at mine. That's fine. But, you know, we'll see what we can do. So what we're going to do, first, get a bit of background about Ketel Marte. Then we are going to present our own mock trade proposals. So I have one, and then both Alex and Aaron created one together. And then we're going to kind of, after that, discuss it and try to land on a big joint mock trade, like a finalized thing from all of us, which will be not obviously on this channel and on this video, but will be posted to Twitter. And I'm curious what Twitter will think of it. We'll see how that goes. But first, to get into the background, why would you trade Ketel Marte? A lot of people who, you know, maybe you have to know who Ketel Marte is unless you literally only watch Mariners games, so therefore you only see the American League. He's been on the D-backs since 2017 when he was traded from the Mariners. Pretty much for the last like 5 seasons now, he's been one of, if not the best second baseman in baseball. And last year he put up 4.6 F-WAR, before that 6.3, before that 4.3, like really fantastic baseball player. From the Arizona perspective, why is Ketel even being considered for a trade?
Yeah, so Mike Hazen, the Diamondbacks GM, basically he's come out and said, I'm not sure why it's getting so much traction this year because we always get calls on him. And I think to a degree that's probably true. But I think what's going on this year is, number one, there was a little bit of drama going on with him in the middle of the season, which kind of brought attention to that. Some players were frustrated with him taking days off. There was kind of an interesting I guess, unexcused absence where he didn't show up and it was in the Dominican Republic for a few days post All-Star break. That has all been resolved, but I think what that just kind of brought attention to, I guess, maybe some sort of concept that the team might be looking to move on. And then the other part of that is the D-backs have no pitching, and they really need pitching. And the only way to get really good pitching is to trade a really, really good player or spend a lot of money. And they just spent a lot of money on Corbin Burnes and Eduardo Rodriguez, and that has not worked out yet. So I think the reason from the D-backs perspective is they have an opportunity to perhaps add someone who is a major impact arm to their rotation. And so they have to be listening at a little higher rate. Now, there's conflicting reports about how hard they're listening. Like Hazen has said he's listening, but he's not pushing it. And then other reports like Bob Nightingale have said they're motivated to trade him. They've told everyone, come and give us an offer. I don't know where the exact truth lies in there. It's somewhere probably in between.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, I think a lot of the reason behind this is simply because the rotation is completely decimated. Not only is Corbin Burnes still on the shelf and will be for likely the majority of the year, but your headliner right now is Ryan Nelson, and behind him is a mixture of Brandon Pfaadt and Eduardo Rodriguez, who have been inconsistent to say the best. I know Pfaadt's had his glimmers, but Rodriguez has, for the most part, been a disaster in his tenure so far. And the recently acquired Mike Soroka, who, regardless of how you feel about him, he should be as far back in the rotation as possible. A trade of Marte, which, while it would take a significant hit to the lineup, is going to open up a lot of possibilities, not just in getting some impact pieces back, some starting pitching, some relief pitching, maybe even a bat. But it'll also open them up to spend more money and make different moves and address more holes than they otherwise would have been able to this winter. So going after a guy like Pete Fairbanks in the bullpen, going after outfield help, going after maybe a corner infielder, something like that, that will be able to help them next year while also addressing the biggest need in a way that they otherwise would not have been able to. I think right now the ceiling for a rotation arm that they'd be able to get otherwise is quite low. I mean, if you go out and get a Merrill Kelly, who would be arguably the most reasonable name that they can get to make an impact, that's going to completely tank what you're able to do otherwise. You might not even be able to get a true closer. It's something to keep in mind, and that's why I think this has gotten a lot of traction, is because it's something that the Diamondbacks might need to do in some way, shape, or form if they want to go and fill all the holes that they have.
Yeah, and I want to touch a little bit on this like drama thing with Ketel in the middle of the season, because it got a lot of like news coverage in the baseball world. And basically my understanding of it is that his house got robbed, and then he took a few days to deal with that, more or less. And people didn't, there was a mixed reaction, which, one, I don't understand the mixed reaction here. If my house gets robbed, like, yeah, you should take a few days, because that's like one of those things where I think a lot of people don't understand, like, your house getting robbed, even if you're not there, like the invasion of privacy that is ridiculous. Like, I once had my car like broken into and the guys tried to steal it, right? And he got chased off, thankfully. Like the invasion of privacy that felt, though, like even though it was such a small deal, like you feel it a little bit. So I can't imagine your house being robbed, let alone, and I don't know if anyone was occupying the house at the time, and especially if that was the case too, like that's a big traumatic event for whoever that is. I thought it was a little strange that people were like, that's not reasonable to take a few days off. I mean, at the end of the day, like baseball is a game. Like these people are people, and that's something a little bit more outside of baseball and a little bit bigger than baseball. But is that kind of an accurate assessment on what was going on for that?
Yeah, so I think there was levels of nuance to it. Yesterday, Torey Lovello talked a little bit about it. Actually, I think he was on Foul Territory. Basically, he was already gone in Atlanta when his house was broken into for the All-Star game, and so I don't think anybody was home. But then it was like some sort of confusing timeline of like, was he already leaving to go to the Dominican before going home to deal with it? So it was like cloudy as to what was happening. And I think that was why it was a problem, because what it sounded like Torey was saying yesterday was he just wished there was a little bit better communication, because Ketel kind of withdrew and was kind of shutting off a little bit, and understandably so. I 100% agree with you. Like when something like that happens, like it's like we don't really even know what that probably feels like totally, especially for someone who's like high profile like him. And so I think it was reasonable to maybe be a little frustrated with the communication that went on there, but I also understand what he was dealing with. And I think it also kind of goes back to the incident in Chicago a little bit, where the fan made some insensitive comments about his mother and who passed away in a car accident. And it was just this, it was kind of just an emotional roller coaster for Ketel for a few weeks there. And I think it probably all added up and came out a little bit at the wrong time when the team was fighting for their right to, I guess, not sell off their teammates. And I think that was probably, I don't know this for a fact, but I think it was probably a little bit of like, guys, we're fighting for our playoff lives here. We're fighting to not part with our teammates and our brothers. And like, he's our best player, our one of our best players is not here. And so I think maybe that was kind of just from all sides what was happening there.
Yeah, so it was almost like, if this would have happened, let's say in April, maybe wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But the fact that this happened pretty close to and before the trade deadline, as you guys are kind of figuring out who you are as far as like either sellers or buyers, that really accentuated the issue.
To piggyback off that last point, if it had happened in April, it absolutely wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But it also goes back to the fact that even in past seasons, Ketel has been on quite a strict health regimen, I guess, when it comes to taking days off. He's gotten quite a few. They've tried to shield him, especially around times when he's been dealing with things. I know not in 2025, but in 2024, he was dealing with an ankle problem after the Phillies' backup catcher slid into him. And in the last couple of days of the season, he also requested to take an additional day off. And I know that didn't go over too well with some of the teammates at the time. Again, high pressure situation, lot of, nerves going on around the team. They're fighting for their playoff lives once again. Health situation kind of got in the way of that. And people blew that out of proportion quite significantly, especially when tied in with the situation from this year. Ketel, by all accounts, he's been a great teammate, great friends with a lot of those guys. He's been in that clubhouse for so long, and has a great relationship with the manager as well. So it's it's tough to see him getting all this negative attention by the media and by other fan bases who, they're almost treating him like a leper in some ways, calling him a clubhouse cancer. And that's, some people are deterred from wanting to trade for him in these proposals and all that, just because of these situations, which almost in a lot of ways weren't his fault.
And just to point out too, at kind of once this all sort of reached a head, he got up in front of a lot of reporters and apologized publicly and took accountability. And you can say whatever you want that he was forced to do that or what. Ketel does not speak to the media very often. And so, and he's a bit of a shy guy. I think him doing that, I think, was kind of a big deal to really take accountability for, like, I've been dealing with stuff, but it affected my teammates, and I'm acknowledging that publicly.
Well, let's get into the trade here, and we got to start off with, kind of the context of why would the Mariners want to do this? Pretty obvious in the sense of the Mariners' second base position for pretty much since Robinson Cano has been a problem. Like it's been an ever revolving door of guys that are, put into the position and they're hoping that they can stick, and just no one sticks at all. Even if they bring back, let's say, Jorge Polanco this year, he, at this point of time with the injuries and his defensive versatility, like, he really shouldn't be playing a lot. So he's not like some lock to play second base if he were to resign. So that leaves Cole Young as the guy going into 2026 as of right now that is your second base option. Now, Cole Young has been a top prospect for a long time, and he was drafted in the first round by the Mariners in 2022 and has pretty much just smashed every single level of the minors. He got his I want to say cup of coffee. I mean, he got a decent amount of time up at 223 ABs last year for the Mariners. And it started pretty decent. I mean, the kid hit a walk-off in his first game. So there's that. The last 30 games, he really struggled. I mean, last 30 games slash line of 137, 264, 205. Ends the year with a 607 OPS. It's his first time in the majors, so I feel like there's not a whole lot to necessarily like glean from that. But it's just a matter of, I mean, if you were to say, would you rather have Ketel Marte or Cole Young? Like, you're going to want Ketel Marte. Like, it's just that simple. So that's why it makes sense for Seattle, is you want a guy, especially when you are one of the favorites in the American League going into 2026, and you have World Series aspirations from all accounts, from the front office and even John Stanton, putting out statements, more or less saying that, which is crazy. He said that before, and you never really take it seriously, but this year you kind of take it a little bit better. Of course, adding Ketel instead of Cole Young, like, you are, as I believe Passan said it, you become the favorites in the AL, right? And the Mariners could make that big splash. They have, out of most teams, they are one of the better suited teams to offload, especially top prospects, to land a guy like Ketel. And Ketel also doesn't break your bank either, at all. I mean, he's signed through 2031. The highest you'd be paying him is a $22 million, and that's not until 2029 and 2030. Before then, you're paying him 14. That was this year. So 16 next year, 12 in 2027. Like, so he's not breaking your bank. He still gives you, room to get other guys, even if you do acquire him. So it's obvious why you would prefer Ketel. He's a 4 to 6 win second baseman. He would be one of the best, if not the best, for second baseman in the AL. So it's a no-brainer for me on why you would want it. Gonna butt in really quick here from the conversation to advertise that on Saturday, December 20th, is getting close here, that we are going to be doing a charity live stream benefiting the Hunger Intervention Program, which is a North King County based charity that gave over 190,000 meals to the food insecure last year, and we want to help them continue to do so. It's going to be a really fun stream. We're going to have interviews. We're going to have other content creators on there. We'll have some games, including Kahoot, where you, the viewer, can participate and actually play in the game as well. And it's gonna be a really fun time. It's gonna be for a good cause. The donation link is already open and will be through the end of the month. The link will be in the description down below. But let's get right back into the conversation. This is where it gets tricky. What's the cost for Ketel? And we don't necessarily know, but from the accounts we've gotten, and you guys both suggested, like, you're ready to get into this, so let's get into it. It's pretty much been reported like they'd be looking for a superstar level package. I mean, we're looking at a potential like Juan Soto level package. Let's get into it. I'm going to start with mine, just because I know that mine is a little bit more palatable than yours. So we'll get into that first and we'll go from there. So this is what I put. All right. So this is my proposal. So, and here's the thing. Okay. And Aaron, don't laugh already. And I want to explain my reasoning here. I'm going to explain every person too. Before the trade deadline this year, when we were looking for a Eugenio Suarez and we were looking for Josh Naylor, the kind of mock trades and the idea on what those guys would cost ended up obviously being a lot more than what it actually took to get them. Now, the scenario is a lot different. Their rentals, like, I get that. The way I'm looking at this is, I've heard from, even Aaron in passing, like, maybe it starts with Brian Wu or Logan Gilbert. I'm taking a little bit of the mindset, like, if this was the trade deadline thing where we thought it was going to cost, Durangelo, Senja, and whoever to get Josh Naylor, Eugenio Suarez, ended up being, Tyler Locklear and some decent prospects at the end of the day, but not to that level that we thought it was going to be. Let me take what we think it's going to be, bring it a step down a little bit, and maybe that's where we land. The headliner for me is Bryce Miller. And the reason I put Bryce Miller as the headliner is, one, he'd be an instant plug into the rotation, of course. I mean, he's already at the major league level. He'd be an immediate number 2 behind Ryan Nelson, I think. I would imagine, because Ryan Nelson is a little bit more of a track record than Miller, especially after Miller's 2025. For me, Miller struggled last year a bit, but not necessarily due to talent. He had the issue with his elbow. We don't necessarily know exactly what it was. I don't know if it was like floating bodies or whatever the term was. But it turns out he doesn't need surgery, which we were told he did. So it's a little weird about that. And I have to kind of put that asterisk on here. Like, I don't necessarily know what his problem is in the elbow, and it hasn't been super clear. So maybe there's something that is going on that I'm not privy to that maybe takes him out of the picture for the D-backs, and I would totally get that. When Bryce Miller was healthy last year, he was phenomenal, and it's specifically in his postseason run. He faced the Detroit Tigers once. He faced that insane Toronto Blue Jays lineup twice, and cumulatively put up a 2.51 ERA, a 1.05 whip in the postseason. And in 2024, if we want to look back at that as like a healthy Bryce Miller, what he can probably give you, it's a sub-3 ERA guy with a fantastic fastball. And also just from a, doesn't maybe matter from a trade standpoint, but, a really good clubhouse personality guy. Like, everyone loves Bryce Miller. So there's a little bit of that too. So Bryce Miller is my kind of like headliner guy. You need a starting pitcher to plug into the rotation. You're going to get quality innings out of him. And I think he immediately becomes your number 2, especially with how bad Erod was last year. I hate this exercise, by the way, because I love Ryan Sloan. He is my favorite prospect that the Mariners have. I'm putting him in here because I think if you're going to go down from Wu and Gilbert, you have to give potentially your highest upside starting pitcher prospect. Now, Cade Anderson, the case could be made from him. The reason I don't put him in here is because I just simply don't think the Mariners would get him to fall to number 3, like magically in the draft, and then just trade him away before he even throws a pitch for them. I think Ryan Sloan is the guy where he's thrown a pitch in professional baseball. Like, he was fantastic last year. He's 19 years old. He's 6'5", 220 at 19 years old. So, and he's filling into his body quite well. A lot of times we have those problems where there's these young guys with a big stature that just don't fill into their bodies very well, and they kind of look a little awkward. Ryan Sloan's not that guy. And in Modesto last year, his first professional season, 18 starts in Modesto specifically. I'm not really counting Everett because it was like 3 starts or whatever. 3.44 ERA, but mostly 70.2 innings pitched, 77 strikeouts. So he's striking out more than a batter an inning, and a 1.15 whip. So like, he's not walking a bunch of guys. That is a fantastic season from an, at the time, I believe, 18-year-old in his first professional season. Like, the upside is insane. He has multiple plus pitches. Like, there is, in my opinion, the reason I would hate to trade him is I think there is like a legitimate potential future Cy Young contender here in Ryan Sloan. And you'd be getting him to develop him in your system. He is a few years away. Like, you're not going to see him until, 2027. He could maybe get a cup of coffee. We'll see. But that's like maybe even pushing it a little bit. But regardless, it's like the high upside. Like, imagine what you could have with him. Johnny Farmelo is next. Just because I feel like he's been like linked in a lot of the mock trades too. Like, it seems like, I don't know why, like Arizona and Johnny Farmelo make a lot of sense. And maybe this is like some weird, just like random subconscious thing, but I think Aaron has mentioned Johnny Farmelo too. Like, he seems like he makes a little bit of sense for a guy where I wouldn't even necessarily call him a lottery ticket. It's just, he's dealt with the injuries, so he doesn't necessarily have as much time as you would like to really like glean from his stats, like what you think he could be. But you have a super athletic guy who has at the least a plus speed, a decent outfield defense guy, and I should say glove. I don't know why I worded it like that. And then he's just a really athletic guy that you just, I guess, can kind of dream on. So maybe he's kind of leaning in that lottery ticket phase, but he's also, a top 100 prospect for a reason. and so that's where I'm at with Johnny Farmelo. His ETA right now is listed as 2028. So he's also a couple years out. I'll talk about Ty Pete. He is like a true lottery ticket. Like he's also just super, just like athletic, great defense, but his bat is kind of whatever. Like his bat has not really played up super well to professional pitching. But I will say he had a large jump in power last year. It was weird. Like he went from in 2024, 7 home runs to 19 home runs last year. And like, I don't know what the deal is with that, but he needs a lot more average. He needs a lot more on base skills. But if he can get that, which as a guy who's super athletic and has really good raw tools, if you can get that out of him, then he becomes a really decent and good prospect for the outfield. And then I put Tyler Cleveland here, and I did make a caveat here that the Rule 5 is today, I believe. And Tyler Cleveland is not protected in the Rule 5 draft, so he very well could be not in the organization by the end of the day. And if that's the case, then I'll sub in Charlie Belainson instead, because those are really the only two like major like relief prospects that we have. But Tyler Cleveland could play in the big leagues next year, potentially. He's a righty submariner, slow velo, but a sub 1 ERA last year. Like he was phenomenal, and doesn't strike out a whole lot. It's 50 strikeouts and 51.2 innings pitched, so a little bit less than a batter per inning. So he would be a guy that, starts out as a middle reliever guy. Maybe he doesn't get, much more than that, but he's pretty much been, when we're talking about what the Diamondbacks need, it's pitching, starting pitching, relief pitching, and unfortunately the Mariners don't have the best like relief pitching prospects. It's really Cleveland or Belenson, so I'm going to put the guy who was the best last year and put Cleveland.
The first thing that I wanted to say while you were going through it, the goal in, I guess, sort of acquiring the starting pitching is getting impact pitching that you can plug into your rotation or your bullpen at a relatively close time frame. Sloan, for me, and one of the reasons why I'm a huge Sloan fan. One of the reasons why in one of these trades I'm a little more like, yeah, maybe they would go for him, is because he is a few years out. Incredible arm, but by the time that Sloan comes up, he might be on a similar timetable to one of our big gem pitching prospects, Daniel Egan, who also showed out a lot this year. So that's just a reason why I was a bit more hesitant to include Sloan in my deals. Farmelo, who you said that I've spoken to you about before, sure, when he was drafted, he did have a lot of potential upside in a bat as well as an outfielder. He is pretty toolsy, and in an outfield that is very left-handed heavy, and we've got the stereotype of small left-handed outfielders that can play defense. It's some variety in the outfielders is pretty necessary. So Farmelo and Pete, sure, pretty good fits. But the big name here, obviously, Bryce Miller. I'll let Alex go after this, because I'm sure we both have some thoughts here. I don't think that he is enough. I don't think that trading Ketel Marte off your roster to get Bryce Miller on your roster is a positive point swing there. Simply what you're losing is a potential, like, I think the highest MVP3 second baseman who you can plug in at the top of your lineup, switch hitter, plays good defense. And Bryce Miller, for what he's produced, he had an incredible season a couple of years ago. I know he's struggled a bit since, dealt with the injuries. He's been really good when he's healthy, but simply the production that you can count on there, it's not uncomparable, but it's just not what the Diamondbacks are looking for at this time out of a frontline gem of a trade proposal.
I actually very much like Bryce Miller. I think his stuff is good, and I agree. I feel like he'd be a good clubhouse addition as well. My thing with him is that he's almost a prospect in my mind. And you look at all the control he has, and that's great. And he has history of success, but he hasn't had the consistency yet. And I think the D-backs they're not looking for a team that like trading Ketel is not them building for 2028, 29. Trading Ketel is, we want to have a high-end rotation and add to the bullpen, add to our hitting for 2026 and however much baseball is played in 2027. And because I just think there's a lot of pressure right now. Back-to-back years missing the playoffs despite having a good team, having talent, having expectations. I don't think that's going to fly very well if they're not able to at least be in that conversation in 2026. And I'm not sure that Bryce Miller is more than maybe a high end, number 2 or 3. Right now, I would still take Ryan Nelson over Bryce Miller right now. And I think if that's the case, that's not enough to pry Ketel away when the other parts of the trade are also several years away.
Yeah, I'd say that simply because the Diamondbacks don't need to trade Ketel. It's just a fact of, sure, his 10-5 rights kick in next year. He's under a lot of club control, cheap club control. He's an incredible hitter. A lot of teams are going to pony up some pitching that they might otherwise not, because they know, okay, this might be our last chance to get an impact second baseman like Marte in this kind of situation. I mean, it's not very often that you see teams willing to entertain an offer on their star players. I mean, sure, the Padres do whatever the Padres do, but the Diamondbacks aren't known for being in this situation. I remember the Paul Goldschmidt trade pretty much broke the city in two, and he was a rental. So I can't imagine what a trade like this would do, especially if they can't get back an arm that would completely change the dynamic of this team.
Yeah, and I guess the last piece of my proposal that I'll put is a little bit of the reason I was putting more guys that are a bit maybe further away but have kind of a higher upside, like a Ryan Sloan and whatnot, is, and I'm curious your guys' opinion on this. For me, I have a hard time believing like the D-backs are going to be super in it next year, especially with just all the arms that you guys, like, even with a Bryce Miller or whoever else, we're about to propose here. Even then, like, however many arms are going to be injured for most of, if not the whole year, like, it's going to be really tough. So I'm curious, where do you guys see like the D-backs going into 2026? Do you think it is, hey, they could still get a wild card and why not still push for that? Or kind of like, we just kind of need to get through this year, and then hopefully if baseball's played in 2027 and beyond, like, we'll have our guys back and we'll be ready to go.
What's so odd about baseball in general is that I feel like you can't really say that they're not able to contend. They need pitching. I mean, they need pitching to contend. But I mean, you look at the 2024 season, and they won 89 games off their offense alone, and still had a terrible pitching staff. Like Aaron said, they don't have to trade Ketel to be in contention. It's just the pitching staff is in such a state of disarray that if there's an opportunity to make that better, they have to take it, I think is kind of more what it is. But it's not a sense of, we need to get rid of this player. And because I think Ketel and Corbin Carroll, Geraldo Perdomo, that lineup is good enough to win a lot of games already. So I think it's definitely not out of the question. And also there's positive regression too. Like you never know when like a random reliever who had a terrible season might, have a great season the next year. Maybe Brandon Pfaadt has a bounce back year. Maybe Eduardo Rodriguez figures something. Like we just don't know. Maybe Corbin Burns comes back and is like as good as he ever was. It's definitely possible that they'll contend. My gut, as a little bit more pessimistic, I don't think they're going to be able to make the playoffs in general, but I'm not sure that they could even make enough pitching additions to get there right now either, unless they're adding, Skubal and 3 relievers and, that kind of thing.
I think what also factors in is that there's 2 guys named AJ Puck and Justin Martinez, both of whom had elbow surgery last year and are going to be out for half the season at minimum. So, I mean, you can look at that glass half full, as in you're getting 2 really impact relievers back as almost deadline acquisitions. or you can look at it as what it is, which is saying that two of your best arms, well, three of your best arms aren't going to be there for most of the year.
Well, let's get into your guys' proposal. So, Mariner fans, buckle up here. Your guys' proposal is Logan Gilbert, Cole Young, Cade Anderson, and Charlie Valenson. So, go ahead and you guys can, I guess, take turns explaining, if you want, like, why this proposal makes sense to you, both for the Mariners and for Arizona.
I'll let you take the lead, Alex.
Okay. All right. You want me to get in trouble first. All right.
We're both getting in trouble here, okay?
So like we thought about going for Brian Wu, but I think Wu is kind of, to me, from what I understand, is definitely one of those, like, that call gets shut down before the any sort of discussion happens. The D-backs are looking for a very, very high-end impact pitcher. And Gilbert he only has 2 years of control, as opposed to Kirby, who has, I don't know,
3.
more than that, 3. So I get there's a little bit of risk there, but Gilbert has just been, I mean, he's been close to an ace, and he's not the Mariners' ace right now. And so I think that's kind of why it's one of those things where you have to be willing to move somebody who is very, very good when you have an excess of that from the Mariners' perspective. If you have Brian Wu, and if you guys are high on Bryce Miller, and and you have the pitching development track record that you have, there has to be a little bit of, I guess, willingness to part with maybe the most, not most likely to leave, but the closest to leaving. That isn't Luis Castillo, because the D-backs are not taking that on. If the D-backs are looking for, and this is, Ken Rosenthal used the word superstar level package, and you are not getting a superstar level package of just prospects this year. Like I said, they want major league pitching. And so that has to be somebody of Gilbert's caliber, with at least for not a 1-year rental, at least.
Yeah, Alex and I talked about this a lot. And when we were making our discussions yesterday, we really looked at some arms around the league. We looked at other teams and what we might be able to compare this to. And we said, what is it really going to take? What would the Diamondbacks be willing to part with Ketel for, and what would really make an impact on the major league roster past what could change their outcome this year? Really, we weren't even sure if a move like that could be found where both sides would be okay stomaching the move. Since we're trying to come up with what would it take, I think it would take Logan Gilbert.
I understand the Logan Gilbert portion, and we'll kind of get into negotiating when we get to the segment of, like, we're trying to make a joint mock trade that makes sense, that we all agree on. Cole Young, though, is an interesting portion, because when I've talked to Aaron, it's pretty clear that the D-backs, if there's anything they do have, it's a lot of infielders. So where does Cole Young fit into this deal, or why does he get put into this?
I'm not super sure about much of the outfield options on the Mariners. They need a right-handed outfielder. And if you take on an infielder, you can move Blaze Alexander to the outfield full-time. He's a righty bat with a cannon for an arm, who has made some highlight reel plays in left field and center field. Maybe even Jordan Lawler. Lawler played center field in the Dominican Winter League this year. And so I think there wasn't an outfielder that I felt as good about in the Mariners system that was a right-handed bat, would have as much impact as maybe just moving one of those players and filling the infield with someone else. But I understand the kind of confusion there with, like, the D-backs are becoming the Mariners, where it's all utility infielders now, and then, like, Geraldo Perdomo. So I get that, but I think I've seen, like, Canzone's name thrown around. I don't think they would go after a left-handed power type profile, especially one that they already traded to the Mariners. So that's why I went that direction. But I could understand why that might maybe not necessarily make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I mean, just running down the names that the Diamondbacks have in the organization, you've got Jordan Lawler, Blaze Alexander, Tim Tawa, Tommy Troy, just to start, and potential middle infield options that could be here as soon as like opening day. And I'm sure I even missed a name or two in there. Half of those can be moved to the outfield. The priority is more right-handed in the outfield, getting more athletic in the outfield, getting guys who can hit in the outfield with maybe some power. Blaze has power. I know Tawa has shown some power too. And it's I think Alex and I made a comp that Jordan Lawler is Cole Young with power. Uh, and even though he hasn't really shown it at the major league level either. Um, and I think Young, after thinking about it, is a piece that you can get back and be like, okay, yeah, this is an offensive piece that we could take from the Mariners. And just looking at the other guys who are in the top prospect ranks, it's this is kind of the only name that makes sense, where it's not like the Mariners spitting at you and it's like, what in the hell, why are you trying to go near I don't know, Laz Montez, who I don't think makes sense in this deal. I think Montez would be too high.
The other thing too is that it might free up the D-backs to make a trade with Lawler to somewhere else. I don't necessarily think that they're trying to make that deal happen. They need a high impact reliever, and so using major league quality bats like Lawler and maybe even from the top prospect pool to get a closer or a leverage arm of some kind. Adding an extra infielder in there would kind of free up that resource a little bit as well.
So moving on to Cade Anderson, obviously Cade Anderson is our third overall pick last year and hasn't thrown a professional pitch yet. So for Cade, is it really just, I know it's been between kind of Cade, Sloan, a little bit of Senja, but Senja isn't necessarily seen at the same level as like Cade and Sloan. So is the reason for picking Cade just because, one, he's realistically a bit closer, and with him being older, you kind of know a bit more about what you're going to get than Sloan, who is still 19 and still developing?
I think that when we were brainstorming this kind of activity, we looked at it, and the two main pieces that we kind of came up with is you need a frontline starting pitcher in there, and you need something of the ilk of a top 5 starting pitching prospect. The Mariners aren't rich with pitching prospects at this time. I know they've taken a lot more of an offensive focus in their drafting in the last few years. And Cade Anderson has some incredible potential. I know a lot of people are much higher on Sloan, as maybe am I. But Anderson, I would argue, is closer to the majors. And he is left-handed, which is nice. And he has a lot of potential for moldability. Like you said, he hasn't thrown a professional pitch yet. And, if the Diamondbacks do like him, there's a lot there to work with.
With the last portion, Charlie Balenson is what you guys picked. I know it's been pretty much between him and Tyler Cleveland because they're really the only top 30 reliever prospects that we have. So what made you go Balenson? Is it just the Rule 5 eligibility? We don't really know if it's going to be taken like literally in a few hours. I know Balenson, from my understanding, has like a really good changeup, like one of the best changeups in our system. So is that kind of what we're going off of, just because he does have that one like big plus pitch?
You hit the nail on the head.
Yep.
It's the changeup. It's that kick change, and not just because it's a plus pitch. It's because the Diamondbacks have had an affinity for kick changes. Just look at guys who they traded for last year. Andrew Hoffman, big name there that we got for Randall Grichuk from the Royals, and that changeup is incredible. Charlie Balenson, he doesn't just have the changeup. He's got a pretty good fastball, mid-90s, and he gets some swing and miss. So I liked him.
Okay.
Yeah, and the D-backs are prioritizing kind of going after more of like velocity and stuff, which sounds like a no-brainer, right? But like that hasn't been. And so they're trying to sort of push their pitching development process into more of a let's get a couple of ticks more on the velocity. Let's get stuff with a lot of movement if possible. It might not always work out, but they're kind of saying like we got to go in that direction and see what we can get. And he has a really, really good changeup and a fastball that seems to play slightly above average velocity wise.
Well, now it's time to find a middle ground here. We're going to try our best to see what we can do. So my first question to you guys, are you willing to take George Kirby over Logan Gilbert? Like, would that be someone that you guys would be okay with being a headliner?
I think there's an argument to be made there. I don't necessarily know that he's an ace or anything like that, but I think the extra year of control is probably something that might appeal to the D-backs. And if we're talking about stuff, I think his stuff might be him and Gilbert are pretty close in terms of just raw stuff.
The Gilbert splitter is pretty incredible.
I would say they're very different pitchers, right? Like George Kirby is much more of the command control guy who has really good stuff. Like it's not like it's bad. He's not like a Kyle Hendricks where it's just all control and like letting that do the talking. But I would say Logan Gilbert from, a stuff perspective has more amplified stuff, and that's where he gets like all of his swing and miss, especially on that splitter. So yeah, but I think where I'm coming from here is I do have to take into account, like, I think Logan Gilbert still is the most, I think they would prefer to keep him over George personally. And obviously this is not based on, like, I'm not Jerry Dipoto. I don't know Jerry Dipoto, so maybe I'm wrong. But from pretty much, I think, a consensus opinion here among Mariner fans and Mariners content creators and all that, if they were to keep and hold on to one, if you were to just put it straight up forward, like, do you think they choose Logan Gilbert or George Kirby? I think they choose Logan Gilbert. If they were proposed with, hey, we'll take Logan Gilbert or George Kirby, they would much rather go with George instead. So is that, like, do you think it's Logan Gilbert or bust for the D-backs at all?
Not sure. I'm not that it's a fine line. I think you look at Kirby's, numbers, like, they're good. Last year was a down year. How much does that play into it? I think if they did go with Kirby, you'd probably have to give up Anderson over Sloan. But I'm not sure where the line is drawn, because obviously, like, teams aren't going to give up Skubal or Skeens, and that makes sense. But like, it has to be a guy that can kind of lead a rotation, or at least be like a high end number two, like a very high end number two.
I think that if you do go to George, and again, it's a very fine line. How do you judge the impact of George's addition to the rotation for the next few years compared to taking Ketel out of the lineup? And does that, like, how does that change the Diamondbacks' view there compared to Gilbert? But also, if you do move from a Gilbert to a George, is there maybe room to, like, instead maybe also throw in a major league reliever to sweeten that for the Diamondbacks on that front, so that they can address an additional need there?
Okay, yeah. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was looking at our roster and being like, is there a guy? I mean, it's hard for me to think it wouldn't be a guy like a lower end of the bullpen guy, like a Vargas or a Legumina or something, which I don't think would be appealing to the Diamondbacks. And do I think the Mariners would be willing to give up a guy like Bizzardo, who was phenomenal last year and is a guy who can eat innings? He feels like can go 5 days in a row if you need him to and still be, like, good. I don't know if they would do that. At the end of the day, the D-backs have the leverage in that, right? So the D-backs are going to have their price, and they have the leverage to stick to that price.
I think it starts with Logan Gilbert, and I think depending on how firm Mike Hazen is, it might start and end with Brian Wu.
Okay. So how about this? For the sake of the mentality of the video, we'll put Logan Gilbert. Okay. I hate it and I would say no. But I at the end of the day we gotta stay,
this is gonna hurt.
Gotta stay integrity. The integrity of the video and the point of the video. So it starts with Logan Gilbert. So now it's a matter of the one thing I want to get off the table. I think Charlie Belenson makes sense, and I think he would have to be in there. So I'm fine with just putting him in this. I guess it's Sloan or Anderson. Like, I'm assuming, the spirit of the video, does it have to be like the price is Logan Gilbert plus Anderson and Sloan? Like, there is no way it's anything below that.
Anderson and Sloan?
No, like Anderson or Sloan. There's no chance in hell.
Yeah,
like the phone's going down if it's both.
Yeah.
So no, I'm saying, like, from the spirit of the video, what it would cost. Anderson, Sloan have to be in this. Is that correct to you guys?
I think so. I think there has to be some, like, I think there has to be, unless, like we just said, unless there was like a major league reliever thrown in, you'd probably have to give up a pretty high prospect. That is somewhat close to the majors.
Okay. All right. So then I guess I'll put Anderson in this based off of what we think it's going to cost.
I think that the Diamondbacks would opt for Anderson over Sloan because of his timetable.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, so at this point, we are currently at Logan Gilbert as the headliner, Cade Anderson as the number 2, Charlie Belenson's, wherever in there. And then is there anything else? Like, do you think Cole Young has to be in this as well?
I don't think he has to be. Mm-hmm. I think it would be kind of maybe one of those things that's talked about. Maybe they would go for some like lower level position player, but I think the pitching is the part that Hazen wouldn't budge on. I think I don't think Young would be a necessity to get it done.
I think we're kind of taking the role of Mike Hazen here, where we're willing to flex on Cole Young here, because simply, like we said, we just thought there should be a position player coming back, and we think it should be someone who isn't necessarily a left-handed outfielder.
If you feel like there has to be a position player here, do you think a guy like Michael Arroyo fits into this? Like, I know where he stands in the field is very nebulous right now. But the bat has been great at every level of the minors, and including in specifically Arkansas this year, which is known to not be a very hitter-friendly ballpark. So do you think like a Michael Arroyo type guy maybe in this? Like, because if there has to be a bat, like what bat are we putting in here? Because you said earlier it's not going to be Laz. We already know, like, I don't think you asked for Gilbert, Anderson, and Colt Emerson, so I don't think Colt Emerson is here.
Off the table.
So yeah, so I don't think that's what it costs, right? So is it a guy like a Michael Arroyo for that?
I don't know how the Mariners would feel about putting Michael Arroyo in.
Well, at the end of the day, like, this still has to be just like what you feel like it costs.
Yeah,
and Michael Arroyo is our 5th ranked prospect right now, and the only guys above him is Sloan, Lazaro, Montez, Anderson, and Emerson. So it's either after that it's Arroyo, Farmelo, Celestin, who is more of a lottery ticket from my understanding at this point in his career. There's no way they give away Luke Stevenson, the catcher, because at this point they just traded away Harry Ford. A lot of the rest of these guys are lottery tickets, or you don't really like. I mean, I feel like it's down to Arroyo or Farmelo. So, like, I guess it's like, who do you prefer out of those two?
What do you think?
Arroyo ETA is 2026, Farmelo ETA is 2028, and Farmelo is a lefty outfielder. Arroyo has a more proven bat, but it's just a matter of, I mean, what do you do? Like, what do you do with him? I know he's starting, I want to say in the Dominican Winter League right now, like he's doing a little bit of outfield. So there is that portion, like he could end up just becoming an outfielder. It's just, I don't know how good of an outfielder he's going to be. But it's really, he's a bat first guy.
It's for us, like in the infield, we have prospects that can move. Like even Tommy Troy has spent some time in center field. Like we have guys who are flexible there. Tim Tawa, Blaze Alexander, Jordan Lawler, Tommy Troy, all of them can play infield and theoretically outfield. So I think a guy like Michael Arroyo could make sense if the Mariners would be willing to budge with putting him in this deal when they're already sacrificing like premier pitching.
Because this trade is a little bit more major league focused. I mean, if we're going for
Mhm.
Gilbert, because that's, I mean, they want to compare it to the Juan Soto trade, right? Obviously, was mostly prospects. This is for a major league, high level starting pitcher, and so I think there's less that needs to be tacked on at the end of this trade. I don't think Hazen or the Dbacks are looking for give us as many players as possible. I think they're looking for give us as good of an impact pitcher as possible.
Right.
I do agree though that this doesn't end at just 3 pitchers. Like it feels like there has to be at least one guy. But I mean, there could be a mentality shift of, I mean, you're getting really good pitching, so maybe you can afford to have a position player that maybe is a bit further out that isn't,
Yeah,
ready
that's
literally
that's
next
what I'm
year.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah. So then it's like, I mean, you're looking at, maybe some lottery tickets like a Felman Celestin, Yorger Batista, Ty Pete's like, he's such a hard sell, I feel like, because of just how his bat has performed. It just hasn't really caught up to kind of his defense and his speed and everything else. And then it's like, I'm just looking down our top 30. Like Nick Becker hasn't played an inning of professional baseball. I mean, Jared Sundstrom, I just don't think there's a needle mover guy. I mean, maybe, but he's an outfielder. So there's like that problem.
And it's like, while I love the idea of Yorger Batista, because of some of the stuff that I've seen from him, like, again, lefty and an outfielder. And it's like, it always comes back to this with the Diamondbacks. It's
Yeah, I was looking at Victor Labrada. He's in Tacoma right now, but he's also a lefty. So I'm like, that you don't want that. I think if you have Gilbert, Anderson, Belenson,
probably not.
I don't think they give up Cole Young too. I think it would need to be some sort of just straight up prospect guy. I mean, do you guys have any interest in Farmello at all, or just like, I don't know?
Yeah, I don't think that would be a bad. I don't think that would
It is
be
a lefty
I don't think
outfielder.
so. Just because he's left-handed, I don't think that takes away from.
But he's also a few years out, so like,
Yeah,
you
Right.
know, you don't know what your outfield's going to look like in 2028.
I'm not sure that if they're getting Logan Gilbert, which again I'm not necessarily sure.
They don't care.
Like they're not looking for, okay, well we got a a high end starting pitcher to put at the top of our rotation. We also need our starting left fielder to be a right. Like
Yeah.
I don't think that needs to be part
Our
of the same
starting
deal.
left fielder for 2032 needs to be right-handed.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the hang up for the Marte deal. It's,
So how about we put Farmello in this? Because he's just a guy you can dream on. Like if he can stay healthy in 2028 or so after the lockout, like he might be a good guy for you at that point. Like kind of on that. So I feel like this deal's probably done then. Is that where you guys are
I don't think
at?
there's any more pieces moving in that deal.
Yeah. All right. So are we willing to like finalize this? Like we're going to promote this and all that? Well, not promote it. I'm not saying like I would, yes, I want to do this deal. It's just more of, we think this
I'll
is what
send
it
it
costs.
to Mike Hazen myself.
And I do think like what you said is important too. Is that it's like I don't like Dipoto basically said they're not going to trade Gilbert, right? So like I'm not delusional to think that would be reasonable from their perspective, but I do think that in terms of what it would actually cost, it would have to be something like that. I mean, we talked about like a Hunter Green trade or something like that, and that's not realistic either from the Reds, but it's like that would have to be the type of guy that you would go for.
Okay.
We talked about Hunter Green, and I think we landed on the fact that if it was Ketel for Green, the Reds would need to throw in another piece. Which is that's how absurd this level of trade is, because Ketel is like year over year over year over year proven star level bat, and the Diamondbacks aren't being forced to move him.
And his contract is just so likable that it's just that adds that extra layer. The fact you're only paying him 16 million next year and then 12 after that, you know, and it doesn't get above. I mean, like Aaron mentioned, Edwin Diaz is getting paid more AV than Ketel will at any point during his deal.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I think we're good to like finalize this. The official what it would cost deal is Logan Gilbert, left-handed why did I say that? Left-handed top pitching prospect Kate Anderson, Johnny Farmello, and Charlie Belenson. So that's what it would cost. The last question I have for y'all before we'll wrap it up, because I know you guys have been here a little while. Who is to you guys who is the front runners you think for Ketel Marte trade?
The Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's I
mean, seriously, like I actually think, as much as the trade talks have been heating up, I think they are way more willing to hold on to him than to take something that's not going to be a huge impact.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of teams that I think could push the number a little further, I think the teams that would be closest would be the Pirates and Reds. But I think more than anything else, Mike Hazen's going to be motivated to keep Ketel and to make a couple moves to kind of surround him and to try and give that offense the best chance they can to out hit the home runs that our pitchers give up and call it a day.
Thank you so much to Alex and Aaron for coming on the channel. I really appreciated their insight for this type of exercise. Of course, if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe today. It is free. It helps me out a lot. You can also like the video as well. And comment down below what you think about the Ketel Marte trade. What do you think it may cost for the Mariners to get him? I would love to know your comments and your opinions down below. That's going to be it for me in this one, and I will see you in the next.